Ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between. Today we are back with another banger. We have got creating a UFC 306 card. Let's get started with the early prelim opener. I've gone for Rafael dos Anjos versus Manuel Torres. This is in the lightweight division. This is an interesting matchup because obviously RDA, former champion. I thought I'd start this card off with a good fight, like similar to how they did on UFC 300, where you had two big names in Figueiredo and Garbrandt, two former champions. So I thought I'd do a similar thing with RDA, opening the card up, and then you've got him against a man who's undefeated in the UFC, Manuel Torres. I think that's a good fight to open up the early prelims and the whole event as a whole. But yeah, there's not really much to say about this fight, so let's get straight on to the next fight. I've gone for Jalen Turner versus Daniel Zaluba. Again, a bit of a step down in competition for Jalen Turner. He's just come off that stoppage to Renato Moicano, so I believe it makes a lot of sense for him to fight someone unranked next. He's sort of floated around that lower half of the top 15 for a few years now, so I think it makes sense for him to take a step down in competition. And you know what, for Zaluba, this is a great opportunity to make a bigger name for himself. He's already announced he's going to be on the card, so I think it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, alright, let's get into the next fight on our early prelims. I've gone for Irene Aldana versus Misha Tate in the women's bantamweight division. I think this makes a lot of sense. I think Aldana is supposed to be booked against someone on this card, but I've done this as well for Anthony Hernandez. Just imagine that they rescheduled the event. They've done it before. They did it with Ihor Poetira, I think that's what he says his name. So just imagine that they've shuffled it about a lot, and she's now going to be fighting Misha Tate. You could maybe bump this up a bit more, but I've decided to keep this on the early prelims because I don't think there's much hype around this fight. But yeah, okay, let's go into the early prelim headliner. I've gone for Kevin Holland versus Michael Morales. Again, this is another fight that you could probably move up. You could maybe reschedule it and reshuffle the card with a few of the next fights, but I think this is a good early prelim headliner. Kevin Holland is a big name, don't get me wrong, but I think it's good if they structure it similar to how they did UFC 300, where you've got big names throughout the card rather than all just at the top. Again, I think that this is a good fight for Kevin Holland. He's just had a step down in competition against, I think his name's Mikhail Olajaychik, I think that's how you say it, but I might be getting confused with someone else. And it's a good step up for competition for Michael Morales. Yeah, I think there's not really much to say about this one. You've got a veteran versus an undefeated prospect, so yeah. Okay, let's go to the prelim opener. I've gone for Cody Garbrandt versus Raul Rosas Jr. This fight makes a lot of sense. This is quite an interesting fight, to be honest. You've got former champion in Cody, who's obviously fallen off quite a lot, versus an up-and-coming prospect in Raul Rosas Jr. You know what, I can't wait to see this fight if this does actually happen. I think Raul called him out on UFC 300, or he said he wanted to fight him on 300, but I'm not sure what happened with that. But yeah, so you know what, I'd be a fan of this fight. I think it makes a lot of sense for both guys because you've got a step down, someone who's fairly unexperienced for Cody, and also you know what, if Raul can beat Cody, then he's just beaten a former champion, and it's time to give him a top 15 opponent, and it shows that he is on a higher level than a lot of people assumed when he took that loss. But yeah, right. Okay, let's go to the next fight on our prelims. I've gone for Dan Ige versus Jonathan Martinez. I think this fight makes quite a lot of sense. Ige is going to be on the card, so it makes sense to have him fighting someone of Mexican origin. And Martinez also just coming off that co-main event fight against Jose Aldo, so he's got more people know who he is now than they did before. I didn't really know Martinez much before the Jose Aldo fight, so it makes sense to have him fight Dan Ige. And you know what, this isn't it's not like we're giving Dan Ige a free win. I considered putting him against someone a bit lower level, just so to sort of build Ige's star. And after the 303, what he did to save the event, I think the UFC needs to pay him back a bit with not easy wins, but a few confidence builders. But then again, having said that, Martinez, put up a decent fight against one of the greatest of all time in Jose Aldo. So yeah, I think that fight makes a lot of sense. And Martinez, even though he is currently competing at bantamweight, has actually fought at featherweight before. But yeah, right, let's go to our next fight on the prelims. And for Anthony Smith versus Dominic Reyes. I think they've actually updated Dominic Reyes' photo since I made all the visuals for it, so I should have probably gone through and changed it. Yeah, they have. But you know what? Yeah. Anyway, I think this would be a good fight to have on the UFC 306 card. Anthony Smith, obviously. I don't know why. I don't know if he is actually of Mexican, descendants, but he always wears green and red shorts. I'm assuming Dominic Reyes. Yeah, he's obviously. I think he's half American, half Mexican. But yeah, so it makes a lot of sense for both guys, and this is a good fight. Sort of to crown the real gatekeeper of the 205 division. But yeah, I'd root for Dominic Reyes in this fight. I quite like Dominic, and I feel for him after the robbery loss to John Jones, and then obviously the Blachowicz fight, the Prohaska, and then getting knocked out by Ryan Spann. That's not good. But luckily, he was able to redeem himself against Dustin Jacoby. So I think this fight makes a lot of sense to have on the card. Right, let's go to our prelim headliner. I've gone for Yair Rodriguez versus Diego Lopez. Now, a lot of people probably would have said Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. It should be on this card after it fell through. But I would actually rather see Yair fight Lopez. And the reason I say this is Brian Ortega is probably going to be moving up to the 155 division. So, I think it makes sense to have Lopez fight another Mexican fighter. And you've got Mexico on Mexico. I don't actually know. I'm not sure where Lopez is from, because I swear he represents Brazil, but then he also speaks Spanish, and he's listed as being a Mexican fighter. I'm not sure if he... anyway, I think he's Brazilian but trains out of Mexico. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to have these two fight. I don't want to see Volkanovski fight Lopez, because I think it's a bit of a high risk fight. If you saw my UFC 305 card, you would have seen that I have him against Aljamain Sterling, because I think that's a fight where I think it's fairly low risk of getting knocked out against Aljo. Whereas if Volk fought Diego Lopez, I feel like there's a higher risk of getting knocked out. So I think that this fight makes a lot of sense. Mexico versus Mexico. Let's do it. Alright, now we move to the main card. Now, alright, hear me out. I've gone for Anthony Hernandez versus Bo Nickel to open up the main card. Now, the reason I've done this, even though I personally wouldn't agree with it, and I wouldn't have Bo Nickel above sort of two former champions, and three if you include Yair for being an interim champion, and then you've also got title challengers. Oh, actually 4 as well, because I forgot about Miesha Tate. So even though I wouldn't have this fight as high up, I do believe that Dana White wants to push Bo Nickel, and so I think you had him on 300, so put him on 306, which is another huge card. And then you could possibly put him on the Conor card maybe, or the 309 if he's willing to turn around quite quickly. But yeah, so I think that this fight would make a lot of sense to have as the main card opener. And it's a good step up in competition for Bo Nickel. Obviously, he's no longer going to be fighting journeymen like Cody Brundage or Val Woodburn. But equally, he isn't fighting like a higher level opponent. I saw someone say he should fight Paulo Costa. I'm pretty sure Chael Sonnen said that Sean Strickland should fight Bo Nickel, but I don't think Bo is quite ready there yet as a mixed martial artist. So I think this fight makes a lot of sense. Anthony Hernandez is Mexican, so to do this fight would make a lot of sense. Right, let's go to the next fight on the main card. This is one I'm personally really excited for, and I think they could make this matchup. And for Charles Oliveira versus Brian Ortega, who wouldn't want to see this fight? Two amazing submission artists. You got one of the most entertaining fighters on the roster in Charles Oliveira, and you know what, Brian Ortega's not too boring either. He may not be as interesting on the mic. Neither are particularly interesting on the mic, but to watch, they're both pretty interesting. So I would definitely be down to see this fight, and I think this would be a good fight to have on the main card. Former champion in Charles with a huge fan base. So yeah, right, let's go to the featured fight of the night. I've gone for the Ultimate Fighter Series 13 finale. I don't know if they call it finale, but I've gone for Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 3. I do believe that this fight will be on the card. There's loads of photos with Alexa Grasso stood in front of the Sphere, so I can't imagine they'd have her there to have her not be on the card. I know I made a video detailing who should headline every pay-per-view, and I had this as the headliner for the Sphere, but I didn't realise when I heard Dana say they spent 17 million on the card, I realised it probably wasn't going to be Grasso versus Shevchenko 3 as the main event. So you know what, I think this would be a good fight to have on the card, and I would be super excited to see if Grasso can actually prove a point. This is one of the few women's fights that I genuinely care about, or the two women's champions that I care about are Zhang and Grasso. So you know what, to have one of them on this card would make a lot of sense. But yeah, right, let's go to the co-main event. I've gone for Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili. This was a tough one, to be honest, because I didn't know which one to put as the main event. Obviously you'll see the main event as the next fight, and I'm sure you could probably guess what it is, but I wasn't sure which one should be the main event and which should be the co-main. But I thought, seeing as the fight above it is champ versus champ, I think it makes more sense to have this as the co-main. O'Malley's obviously coming off that impressive win over Chito Vera, so I think it makes a lot of sense to have him fighting the number one contender in Merab, who for some reason is now claiming he's Mexican. But you know, I really enjoy seeing this fight. I think you've got a really strong striker versus a really strong wrestler. I either see two results, and that's O'Malley knocking out Merab or Merab winning a decision. I can't see O'Malley being able to go the distance with Merab, especially with Merab's cardio. But I don't know, I think he's done a 5-rounder before, but I think he did against Pirotian. But yeah, so I think this fight makes a lot of sense. And of course, in the main event, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, the featherweight and BMF titles. I do think that if Topuria beats Holloway, he should get the BMF title as well. And you know what, he isn't someone who doesn't fit the BMF sort of mantra. If Justin Gaethje were to have beaten Max and then fought Islam, I don't think Islam should have gotten the BMF title, or he doesn't really fit the demeanour of being a BMF. Whereas I feel like Ilia Topuria does more if he's able to beat Max Holloway. He's undefeated, and he rarely fights. So when he does fight, I feel like it should be a big occasion. I honestly don't know who I want to win this fight, because Topuria is probably more marketable in the sense that he can have, he has a huge fan base in Spain, Georgia as well. They all love him. Whereas if Max wins, then we've got a super entertaining fighter. And I think Max is still in his 20s. I might be wrong, or he could be I think he could be early 30s. Let me have a look. But Max is he's 32. So you know what? For him to have been competing as long as he has, I think he's been fighting for 12 years or something. He is 5 years older than Ilia, so he's still, fairly young for someone who's already in probably the top 4 greatest featherweights of all time. But I don't know who I want to win. Honestly, I'm not sure. If Topuria wins, then it can give Volk the chance to redeem that loss, which I'm sure he'd want to do over beating Max for the 4th time. Whereas if Max can win, then he could possibly move up and fight Islam, and he could then get double champ status and hold the BMF title and be a former interim title holder. So I think that fight makes a lot of sense, but let's see what happens. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other video ideas, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys later. Peace, love and guidance. I'm out.